Okay, so first things first, when you are trying to find the vertex, anytime it asks you to find the vertex and it's in standard form like this, that's negative b over 2a. So this formula right here. B happens to be negative 12. When you go to do negative 12, that does turn into positive 12. A on the bottom is 3, and 2 times 3 is 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Then, how do you find the second half of this vertex? What do you do with 2? Plug it in for x, that's right. And I'm going to do that in my phone calculator really quick. A fancy phone calculator. So I'm going to do 3, if I can type, 2 squared. Make sure you use those parentheses. Minus 12 times 2 plus 5. And that is your vertex. And then I am going to skip to the bottom of this page and do the graph really quick because it takes about 30 seconds. And I know some of us are a little stressed out about the graphs. But that should be your first vertex. On the graphs, it's going to give you the information you need. All you have to know is how to put it on the graph. So when it tells you the vertex, x goes first, then y. So go to where x is 5, here. Y is negative 4, here. Put a point. And as soon as you draw the vertex, draw the little line that goes up and down through it like this. That just helps you find the middle of the graph. If you don't do it now, you're probably going to forget which point is the vertex. And then your zeros are at 4 and 6. Zeros are the same thing as x-intercepts. So you just put them on the x-axis as separate points. They're not one point put together. One is at 4, and then separately one of them is at 6. And you just draw a U. That U shape is called a parabola. I know that's kind of a weird word. A lot of us don't know how to say it yet. That's fine. We're just getting used to it. Parabola. I can't remember who it was yesterday. Somebody yesterday really struggled with it. Okay, 7.2. It wants you to find the vertex of this equation right here. No, I don't know why the 7 got bumped down to its own line. Yes, it bothers me as much as it probably bothers some of you. You're still trying to find the vertex. So you're still going to use negative b over 2a. This time, b is 40. So negative b is negative 40. And a is negative 16. So 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. This is the part that freaks people out. Negative 40 divided by negative 32 is 1.25. Yeah, it's weird, but in a real-world problem, you're going to see some decimals that you maybe aren't used to. Even though that's a decimal, you're still going to plug it back in for t. So what I'm going to do is take my calculator, type the negative 16, 1.25 squared, plus 40, 1.25, plus 7. 32. And then use your common sense. The next part of the problem is trying to ask you what each one means. This first number that we plugged in for t, that's our time. This one over here is h, or feet. So it reaches a maximum height of 32 feet, 1.25 seconds after being thrown. And all I did was I did the math. Technically, I could reread this problem and realize that it's talking about a t-shirt cannon at a hockey game that goes 32 feet in the air in 1.25 seconds. But I didn't actually need to know any of that to solve it. Okay, the rest of it's just there to be there. You don't really necessarily need it to solve. And then when it asks you how high will it be after 1 second, that's where you do the same thing you did with the 1.25, but you only want to do it with the value 1 instead. So I'm just going to go delete the 0.25. Or you can retype it in if you would rather. After 1 second, it was 31 feet in the air. And then I'm just going to kind of briefly say what you would do on the others, but I'm not going to actually do it because you're going to want to practice it on your own. Go find these 4 points on the graph. If it is on this line, then you circle the point. If it is not, then you cross it out. And on the bottom one, it wants to know which one is a solution. Notice how they both have -3. You're going to take -3, plug it in for x, and either you're going to get 8 or 10, and you circle the correct one. And that's pretty much it. When you are finding the zeros, this is a part of the quiz that I know some of us were struggling with a little bit. There's 2 methods. Number 1 is the square root method. And if you didn't write a 3 in front here, make sure you do that. You make this side 0, and you solve it like a normal equation. So add 75 to the other side. Then divide by 3. 25 equals x squared. At the very end, you have to do the square root. Or ask yourself what number squared is 5. Or 25. The answer is 5. And -5. And I do not believe that that one right there was actually on our quiz, but the other one is. And then let's talk about factoring really quick. Factoring is the one that gets set up like this. You still have a 0 over here. That's how you find the zeros. And then you need to find 2 numbers that multiply 15 and add to -8, which is -3 and -5. Your zeros are what number you plug in for x to make this 0. Or if you solve this equation right here, you would add 3 to the other side, so that one's 3. And if you tried to solve this equation, you would add 5. 0 plus 5 is 5. Those are always going to be opposites, or we always flip them. You guys kind of have your own way of thinking about that, your own phrasing, but it's always going to be the opposite there. And that's how you find the zeros by factoring. Okay? If you wanted to write a quadratic function using the zeros, this is probably going to be involved in a multiple choice problem on your test. All you need to know is that in the parentheses, these 2 numbers need to be the opposites. So it needs to be x plus 8 and x minus 4. And if you wanted to continue and write it all the way out like this, the number in the middle is going to be these 2 added together. And the number at the end is those 2 numbers multiplied together. Because the numbers in parentheses add to the middle, multiply to the last. And that's kind of like an either or situation. I wouldn't necessarily need you to write it the way on the bottom, but you could if you wanted to. In fact, I may be offering extra credit for doing that on the test. Okay, I'm going to kind of briefly go over 7.4 so we're all ready for it. Okay, 7.4. So 7.4 is going to use this formula. It is the part that goes under the square root in the quadratic formula. And the square root of a positive number gives you 2 answers. The square root of a negative number is not possible, so it doesn't give you any solutions. And the square root of 0 only gives you 1, solution because positive and negative 0 are the same thing. Whenever we do a square root, we've got to do like 5 and negative 5 like I did on 7.3 a second ago. But 0 doesn't have a positive and negative, so it's just the same answer. And you can't even do the square root of a negative. Okay? So all I have to do is find out what b is. Negative 3 squared minus 4. A is 9. C is 2. Don't worry about trying this all in your head. I would just take your calculator out and go for it. Negative 3 squared minus 4 times 9 times 2 is negative 63. Since we can't do the square root of a negative, it has no solution. If I had gotten exactly 0, I would have circled one solution. And if I had gotten positive 63, I would have circled two solutions. Okay. And then I'm going to move on to 7.5 and pause there for the quiz because that's about what you guys need for the quiz. So 7.5 just kind of puts everything that I just talked about together. So it's going to ask you to find the vertex. Negative b over 2a, which turns into negative 4 over 2 times 1. And negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Then you take negative 2 and you plug it into your calculator for x. And I didn't type the 1 in front, but you could always do that if you wanted to. And I got negative 1 as my answer. So I'm going to go left 2, down 1. That's my vertex. Don't forget to draw the line through the middle. If you don't do that and you move on to the next step, you're going to probably get a little confused as to where that dotted line is supposed to go. And then for your zeros, because there's 3 things, you want to do this one. And I need 2 numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 4, which is 1 and 3. So my zeros are negative 1 and negative 3. And those go on the x-axis at negative 3 and negative 1. And if you notice, my vertex is still in the middle. That's a good thing. That means you're doing it right. The last part is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is when you plug in 0 for x. But we did talk about a shortcut. If I plug in 0 for x, and this is 0, and this is 0, the only thing left is 3. Put that on the y-axis. And then there's this little box that says reflect it. It's 2 away from the middle. So go 2 on the other side and put the same point. That's more just a reminder to do it. I'm not going to count you off if you forget to check your little box. That would be kind of silly. And that's your graph. And actually, there is one other thing I forgot to talk about. It's the very last page. So I'm going to skip 7.6 for right now. I'll do this part afterwards. Vertex form is the easiest one. Your vertex is these 2 numbers, but the one that comes out of parentheses has to flip. So this one's always the opposite. This one's always the same. And then for your y-intercept, you got to plug in 0 for x. But it's not just the last number this time because of the parentheses. I actually have to type that in. Three. So I'm going to go put my vertex at 1, negative 4, which is right 1, down 4. Draw my line through it. put my y-intercept at 3, and flip it across. Boom. The